Imagine trying to apply for a really complex mortgage while your house is actively on fire.
I mean, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Right. Like, think about the paperwork, the endless hold music, all the bureaucratic hoops you would have to jump through. Now, imagine doing all of that, but instead of your house, it's your mind that is on fire.
Yeah, that is a perfectly visceral way to look at it.
Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah.
If you are joining us to get a quick, fascinating synthesis of our research, well, you are in the exact right place.
Absolutely.
Today, our mission is to unpack a staggering and frankly infuriating paradox in modern society. We're looking at the sheer, mountain-moving courage it takes for someone to finally admit they are struggling, and how that collides head-on with an industry standard that makes getting help feel, well, incredibly alienating.
It really is a profound point of friction in the human experience. You have a person at the absolute peak of their vulnerability.
Yeah,
They have finally breached their own internal defenses to say, I am not okay. And the response they get from the system is often just a cold clinical maze.
that's exactly.
There is this massive disconnect between the empathetic nature of the therapy they so desperately need and the rigid, almost apathetic administration of how that care is dispensed.
And to figure out how to fix that broken dynamic, we are looking closely at a stack of sources regarding a specific clinic. They are based in South City, St. Louis, and they are called Change, Inc., a counseling company.
Right, and we're using their operational model as our lens today because they've built their entire business structure as an explicit rejection of that alienating standard.
Yeah, they literally call it a downright disheartening industry standard. It is a fascinating approach because normally when we talk about mental health, we focus on the therapy techniques, right? Like what actually happens on the couch.
Exactly, but today we are looking at everything happening around the couch, which is arguably where the most critical interventions actually begin.
Oh, absolutely. Because the healing doesn't start in session 3. It starts before you ever even reach the front door, or I guess more accurately, the front desk.
Yeah, the way a clinic is structured, the logistics, the boundaries, the operational protocols, those directly dictate the clinical outcomes. You really cannot separate the business structure of a clinic from the psychological healing process of the patient.
So let's look at their frontline approach. Change, Inc. calls out a staggering failure in typical counseling practices, which is just basic communication.
Right, like answering the phone.
Exactly. They point out that a lot of clinics simply do not answer their phones. They don't return calls, or they rely on these endless, unmonitored web forms.
And in the context of mental health care, administrative ghosting is not just bad customer service. I mean, it is actively harmful.
I want you, listening right now, to think about a time you tried to schedule a basic appointment with a medical specialist. Remember that wall of automated menus?
Oh, yeah. Press 4 for billing, press 5 for scheduling.
Right, now imagine navigating that while you are having a full-blown panic attack, or while you are severely depressed and you haven't slept in 3 days.
It's a recipe for just hanging up the phone and giving up. Think about the psychological state of a prospective patient making that call. They are completely exhausted.
So to be met with silence, or a soulless portal, that removes the human element at the exact moment they need it most.
Which is why Change, Inc. counters this with a strict human-first approach. No robots, no automated software acting as a gatekeeper.
And they guarantee personal human connection and scheduling. The intake staff operates with this mandate of curiosity. They want to gather enough details right up front to find the true right fit for the client rather than just, filling a time slot.
And they are fiercely protective of this. They have published exact, non-negotiable response times.
Yeah, if you call them before 3 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday, a human being will return your call that exact same business day.
And if it is after 3 p.m. or on a Sunday, it is the next business day. Emails follow that exact same strict protocol.
But I have to ask you, why is the simple logistical act of a human being picking up the phone so deeply critical to the actual therapeutic outcome?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at how trauma and anxiety operate in the nervous system.
Okay, right.
When a person is in crisis, their nervous system is highly dysregulated, they are hypervigilant, and they are often subconsciously expecting rejection or failure.
So when they reach out for help and hit an automated wall,
Or worse,
Yeah.
pure silence.
right,
It acts as a negative reinforcement loop. It can trigger profound feelings of abandonment. That silence essentially signals to their brain, you are not important, or the world is too busy for your pain.
wow. So they're being re-traumatized by the administrative process before they ever meet a therapist.
Yeah.
The silence itself becomes a confirmation of their worst fears.
Exactly.
It's basically engineering what I would call the logistics of compassion.
The logistics of compassion, that is a powerful way to frame it. By instituting a strict operational boundary, telling the client, you will hear from us by this exact time, they are stripping uncertainty out of the equation.
And uncertainty is the breeding ground for anxiety.
Precisely. A firm, transparent boundary provides immediate psychological safety. The patient subconsciously feels, okay, this structure is holding me, I can rely on this. That reliability is the absolute bedrock of trust.
Which is the necessary foundation for any successful therapeutic alliance.
Okay.
So let's say the client experiences this logistics of compassion. They feel held by the intake process. The next massive variable is who actually walks into the room and sits across from them.
And the practitioner standard at Change, Inc. is fascinatingly rigid.
Yeah, first of all, they have a strict no interns policy, like none. Every single counselor must have a master's degree or higher in professional counseling, clinical social work, marriage and family therapy, or mycology.
Right, they want mental health veterans,
Right.
mid-career clinicians with actual counseling experience beyond just the broader mental health field.
Okay, let's unpack this because I am going to push back a little here.
Go for it.
Is a no intern policy a bit, I don't know, elitist? I mean, everyone has to start somewhere, right? If I go to a top-tier teaching hospital, I might get a resident, and the care is still incredible. What is the actual tangible risk to a client of seeing a beginner in a therapy setting?
What's fascinating here is that the risk isn't necessarily that an intern is going to cause active malicious harm.
Right, they aren't going to break your brain.
No, exactly. The limitation is really about advanced pattern recognition. The teaching hospital model works brilliantly for acute physical ailments.
Yeah.
A broken bone is a broken bone.
But the human mind is infinitely more subtle.
Precisely. An intern, by definition, is often heavily focused on executing the textbook techniques they just learned. They're actively thinking about the steps of a specific therapy framework.
Whereas a veteran clinician have thousands of hours in the room.
Yes, they possess a global understanding of complex care. They aren't just listening to the words the client is saying, they are watching body language, identifying microscopic shifts in tone.
And recognizing complex behavioral patterns that only reveal themselves through years of experience.
Exactly.
So an intern is trying to read the sheet music, but a veteran is improvising jazz based on the mood of the room.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Now, to be fair to the sources, Change, Inc. does make a rare exception for someone with less experience.
But only if that person is considered a rising star who entirely knocked their socks off during the hiring process.
Right. But the baseline expectations set by the leadership team, and we are talking about founder and CEO Ryan Thomas Neese, clinical director Emily Williams, and managing director Stacy Blassingame, that expectation is highly experienced professionalism.
Which brings us to the rule they enforce that completely caught my attention.
Oh, the practice what you preach mandate.
Yes. Counselors at this clinic must have historical experience being in therapy themselves as clients.
And it goes further than that. They must maintain personal individual therapy alongside individual clinical supervision for the entirety of their employment.
I mean, this is perhaps one of the most vital standards a clinic could adopt. It directly combats a silent epidemic in the mental health profession, which is therapist burnout and countertransference.
Okay, wait, countertransference. What exactly is that?
It's a psychological term for when a therapist unconsciously projects their own unresolved emotional baggage or biases onto the client.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, therapists are human beings. They have their own traumas, their own blind spots, and, their own bad days.
So if a therapist isn't actively exploring their own internal landscape, they run a dangerous risk of letting their ego or their unexamined issues steer the client's session.
Exactly. By mandating that clinicians regularly sit on the other side of the couch, the leadership is enforcing strict mental hygiene. It forces the therapist to continually experience the extreme vulnerability of being a patient.
That totally strips away the hierarchy. It changes the dynamic from, I am the healthy doctor diagnosing the sick patient, to, we are both complex humans navigating difficult minds, and I am currently in the trenches with my own mind just like you are.
It really takes the ego totally out of the room. And if mandating personal therapy solves the problem of the therapist's ego, it completely transforms how they view the person sitting across from them.
Because they see them as a complex narrative, not just a walking diagnosis, which perfectly sets up how they talk about their actual clients. Because the way change ink markets to the people they help is wildly different from typical clinical marketing.
It really is. You go to a standard clinic's website and you usually see this drop-down menu of terrifying medical jargon.
Yeah, but here they use vivid, highly specific narrative vignettes. They introduce us to distinct personas.
And this is a masterclass in bypassing the psychological defense mechanisms we all have when it comes to our own mental health.
Let's look at who these people are, because I was reading these and thinking, I literally know these people. They group them conceptually.
Right, like dealing with external expectations and transition.
Exactly. There's Loney. She was a high school valedictorian, a varsity athlete, totally unstoppable. But now she is a sophomore in college, and she is drowning, failing to balance work, school, and her social life.
Or Jonah, representing the LGBTQIA+ experience. He is an early 20s man from a conservative family, and he is deeply isolated and depressed because he is terrified his family will reject him if he reveals his attraction to men.
Those vignettes perfectly capture the crushing weight of navigating the world's expectations. But then you had the personas illustrating hidden internal struggles.
Take Stephen, representing anxiety. Stephen is an academic whiz. Everyone slaps the label introvert on him.
But the reality is much darker.
Right. He avoids parties not because he just prefers a good book, but because he is completely keyed up and paralyzed by social terror.
Or Nancy, who moved to a new city for a job, overestimated her ability to adjust, and is now sinking fast into the blues because she just cannot connect with new friends.
And then they tackle the messy relational dynamics. You have Angie, who feels constantly wounded and mistreated.
But she's totally unaware that her so-called controlling behavior is actually a codependent response to a needy, unhealthy boyfriend.
Exactly. And there is Nina, the life of the party, whose drinking has crossed an invisible line into addiction. Now she's slurring words at work happy hours, and colleagues are getting worried.
And finally, we have Morris and Jamie, the classic 3-year on-again, off-again couple doing the exhausting let's date other people routine for the 5th time.
Ah, yes. Stuck in couples counseling purgatory.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? Like, why use these specific stories instead of just leaning on the diagnostic manual?
Well, think about the neurological response to reading a clinical diagnosis versus reading a story.
Okay.
When you read a list of symptoms for generalized anxiety disorder, your brain categorizes it as medical data. It feels sterile, foreign, and often stigmatizing.
Plus, people rarely self-diagnose accurately, right?
Yeah.
Because our egos protect us from feeling broken.
Precisely. The average person walking down the street doesn't wake up and say, I believe I am exhibiting criteria A and C for major depressive disorder.
Right. I don't say I have a disorder. I say, I'm just really exhausted lately and everything feels heavy.
Exactly. But human beings are fundamentally hardwired for storytelling. When you read about Stephen avoiding a party because his chest gets tight, your brain's mirror neurons fire.
You recognize the feeling.
Yes. You bypass the clinical stigma and directly access the emotional resonance. The clinic isn't asking you to diagnose yourself. They are asking, do you recognize yourself in this story?
It builds an immediate bridge of empathy. It signals to the prospective client, we understand the messy, complicated reality of your life, not just the textbook definition of your symptoms.
And that messy, complicated reality is reflected in the actual menu of services they offer.
Oh, absolutely. Because mental health care at this clinic is clearly no longer just a binary switch of I'm anxious or I'm depressed.
Not at all.
First of all, just to accommodate people's actual lives, Change, Inc. operates 6 days a week, Sunday through Friday from 10 a.m. all the way to 9 p.m.
But the true diversity is in what they treat. The list of niche services is incredibly granular.
Yeah, under relationships, sure, they have marriage counseling, but they also specifically list consensual non-monogamy, individuating from parents, and even being too demanding.
Under past trauma, they list adult children of alcoholics and recovering from negative religious or spiritual experiences. They even have a track for learned helplessness and generalized victimhood.
And they dive into highly specific situational and personality counseling too, right? Like they have tracks for highly sensitive persons, the HSP trait, and deeply situational things like COVID-19 spending time alone.
They do.
Okay, here is where it gets really interesting, but I also have to throw a flag on the play.
Uh-oh.
They have a specific service listed as encountering disappointment on your birthday, along with birthday and holiday blues.
They do indeed.
Wait, birthday disappointment? I have to push back here. At what point does hyperspecificity just become over-pathologizing a normal, fleeting human emotion?
That is a very fair question.
Like, sometimes birthdays just suck, you know? Do we really need clinical therapy for a bad Wednesday in November when no one bought us a cake?
This raises an important question about the line between validation and pathologizing. It's a great pushback. But let's look at the mechanism of what they are actually doing here.
Okay, I'm listening.
They aren't saying a bad birthday is a mental illness. What they are acknowledging is that for many people, birthdays or holidays act as massive emotional magnifying glasses.
Oh, I see.
A disappointing birthday might actually be the tipping point for deep-seated grief, profound loneliness, or a sudden realization of unmet life expectations.
Ah, so by listing encountering disappointment on your birthday, they're providing an incredibly accessible on-ramp for people who are hurting. It's a
Yes.
Trojan horse.
Exactly. A client might not feel depressed enough to seek major psychiatric help, but they are devastated about their birthday.
And when they see that specific weird private grievance validated in print on a professional clinic's website, the shame just evaporates.
The clinic is essentially saying, we see this all the time. You aren't crazy for hurting over this. It is about ultimate cultural and contextual competence.
Providing specialized tracks for Spanish speakers, polyamorous individuals, or formerly religious persons shows an understanding that you cannot apply a one-size-fits-all therapy framework.
Right. The tools required to help someone leave a high-control religion are fundamentally different from the tools used to navigate consensual non-monogamy.
That makes total sense. You don't have to spend your first 3 expensive therapy sessions just trying to explain the basic vocabulary of your lifestyle to a therapist who has no idea what you are talking about.
Exactly. The clinic has already flagged to you, we get the context, let's get straight to the work.
And when you synthesize all of these elements, you see a completely cohesive operational model.
Change, Inc. has engineered a business system designed specifically to absorb the friction that normally deters people from seeking help.
It really is a holistic ecosystem of care.
It is.
It starts with that human-led, strictly timed communication protocol that refuses to let people fall through the cracks of a digital abyss.
Then it moves into a room with a veteran practitioner who isn't just reciting textbook theory, but who is actively engaged in their own psychological maintenance.
And it culminates in this hyper-specific, deeply empathetic menu of services that treats the client as a complex narrative rather than a broad clinical category.
The structure of the business itself is a therapeutic intervention.
So, to you, listening right now, whether you are looking for therapy down the street in St. Louis, Missouri, or halfway across the globe, this model should serve as your new benchmark.
Absolutely.
It is a checklist for what you should demand from your mental health care providers. You do not have to settle for unreturned phone calls when you are in a crisis.
You don't have to settle for a practitioner who hasn't done and isn't actively doing their own internal work.
You don't have to settle for the disheartening standard. Demand the logistics of compassion.
Which leaves us with a provocative prospect for the future.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If top-tier therapists are required to go to therapy themselves just to maintain their baseline mental hygiene to ensure they don't project their biases and can clearly see the patient, at what point in the future will routine mental health checkups become as culturally mandated for the rest of us as going to the dentist?
Wow, think about that. You wouldn't wait until your teeth are literally falling out to finally schedule a dental cleaning.
Right, yet we entirely expect people to wait until their lives are actively falling apart to see a therapist.
Routine mental hygiene. When you finally do muster the courage to get that help, the process of finding it should never be harder than the healing itself. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the evolving world of mental health care.
Take care, everyone.